Welcome to Stribling's New York. I am your host, Rob Taub, on WOR AM radio, iHeartMedia, 710 on your digital dial. Stribling's New York is a show about business, culture, and people, with a wide range of guests from authors, producers, actors, artists, writers today, and restaurateurs. We're really loaded, plus an expert on mortgages, Melissa Cohn, and including people from the world of real estate, of course, who can tell you about buying, selling, renting a home or apartment, and then everybody else on the show will tell you where to eat, what shows to see, what movies to go to, what books to read, and how to spend your leisure time, where to buy a mattress, the best exterminator. We have a long list of things, but today our first guest is a friend of mine and a best-selling author, USA best-selling author of more than 38 novels, including 7 titles in the critically acclaimed Caitlin Strong series. Please welcome Jon Land. His latest book is Strong Light of Day, and Jon and I are going to discuss his books briefly, and we're also going to talk about movies that have been set in New York and great books that have been set in New York City as well. How are you, Jon?
I'm great, Rob. How about you?
I'm doing well. So tell us a little bit about your latest book. Well, I could set the stage that Caitlin Strong is a unique character. I've done numerous interviews with you in print and written about you. My background, of course, is I once had the greatest side job in the world, which was being a book reviewer for People magazine. So I got paid to read my favorite books and write about them twice, usually in 2 books per issue, which was wonderful. But Jon has written a series about Caitlin Strong, who is the first female Texas Ranger, even though there aren't actually any Texas Rangers that are female. Jon is looking ahead to the future and helping pave the way for women law enforcement people. So tell me a little bit about the latest book.
Strong Light of Day. Caitlin is up against Russians who have reinvigorated a Cold War era plot that features an attack against the nation's food supply. It was interesting because it's agro-terrorism, and we hear so much about so many kinds of terrorism, but you never hear about attacking farmland. You never hear about attacking food supplies. You hear about the power grid. You hear about this. You hear about that. I was shocked that Strong Light of Day is actually the first book to cover agro-terrorism, and hopefully cover it well, hopefully do it a little bit of justice. So I had a lot of fun, but there are no scenes set in New York in this particular book, so it's not exactly.
But you have been to New York in the Flatiron District in a previous book.
I did. You're right. In 2 books ago, I have a fictional 23rd floor on the top of the Flatiron Building, chosen because that's where my publisher is headquartered, Macmillan. The Forge division of Macmillan is headquartered there. So I put a fictional top of a fictional floor, added it on, and had a great scene through that whole neighborhood, the Flatiron Building, which is Gramercy, I guess.
No, well, it's the Flatiron District now.
Oh, it's a Flatiron. There you go. I mean, they've made that beautiful plaza. One of my favorite restaurants in the world, Novita, is up there, a couple blocks from my publisher's office. It's a great neighborhood. Hopefully it's not less great because I set an action scene right there.
Well, speaking of action scenes, okay, I'm very old school and I like old New York movies. And now when a movie takes place in New York, it's like one of the Bourne movies where they drive down the FDR Drive or 2nd Avenue and kill 100 people and smash just as many cars. But I was thinking about some old movies that you and I have talked about before, great movies set in New York, thinking Sweet Smell of Success.
Oh, my
God. I remember when my kids were young, because we lived at 72nd between Madison and Park, we would go to 72nd Street in Central Park almost every day. And there's a little boat pond there, and they've shot Breakfast at Tiffany's there. And I showed my kids the movie, and they were like, how come the park was in black and white back then? But
it's strange because
they were 17 years old then, so they didn't know.
Well, right. I think about Wall Street, the movie Wall Street, and for the nostalgia of seeing the Twin Towers, standing in all their glory, but also, and this ties in with Sweet Smell of Success, because the great thing about that movie with Tony Curtis and the class and the wonderful Burt Lancaster was how it brought you into the world of the gossip columnists and the PR flacks by taking you to the places that they actually went to, like Sardi's, and I guess it would have been Elaine's.
And the 21 Club, it was shot at the 21 because they had phones then, so you got a phone brought to your table.
And think about that. And when you look at Wall Street, which is a movie I can watch over and over and over again and never get tired of it, it captures just as Sweet Smell of Success captures that world. Wall Street captures that glamorous upper Wall, the whole Upper East Side thing when Charlie Sheen moves into his condo, when Michael Douglas says to him, "Go to Morty Sills, tell him I sent you."
You get a suit made. Well, Burt Lancaster lived in what actually was faked in Sweet Smell was his apartment, which they didn't have residential apartments in, as far as I know, was at the Brill Building at 50th and Broadway, which there's a lot of recording studios there and a lot of the film business and music business. That's where Don Kirshner had his place, I believe, and Carole King recorded a lot of music there or wrote a lot of music, but Burt lived in the penthouse and the Brill Building. He had the great line with Tony Curtis, "I'd hate to take a bite out of you, Sidney. You're a cookie full of arsenic."
And nobody could deliver that kind of line. You talk about fudging things like that. I noticed, and I don't think this is my imagination, at the beginning of John Wick, a terrific action film with Keanu Reeves, not the beginning, kind of into the film, maybe 30 minutes, he checks into a hotel for assassins, and I believe it's the Flatiron Building. They they added something to it. They might have done it digitally, but the exterior, because that's the thing about these New York-based movies, the exteriors are often the real building, and then interior that they do whatever they want. I remember, I'm a big fan of, obviously being in the publishing business. I remember the publishing scenes in Wolf.
Jack Nicholson.
With Jack Nicholson. Christopher Plummer's office was actually, they used my publisher's office for those scenes. They shot portions of Wolf inside the Flatiron Building, but the exteriors in that case are not the Flatiron Building. So, you think about all the great films. I mentioned Wall Street. I was thinking the other day of some of the great scenes in 3 Days of the Condor, because as a thriller person, New York offers so many great places.
I think Faye Dunaway lived in Brooklyn Heights then.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was what was convenient for her. She had a very short commute to get to the set when she was shooting those scenes with Robert Redford and of course, the great Max von Sydow.
Yeah, he played the assassin. I'm going to take a quick station identification and a note from our sponsor, and then I'll be back with you, John, so hang on.
Sounds good.
You are listening to Stribling's New York, and we are sponsored by MC Home Loans. Melissa Cohn is the principal there, and you can reach Melissa, believe it or not, if you call this number, 844-667-7300, you will be directly connected to Melissa Cohn, and her website is www.melissachon.mortgage, M-O-R-T-G-A-G-E. Melissa is the premier mortgage expert in the country, if not the world. She has been doing this longer than anybody I know, and she is literally a groundbreaking figure in the business. We are talking to Jon Land, and I'm going to mention to John about a new book that I just read called The Winter Girl by a writer named Matt Marinovich. He sounds like he should be playing football for Buffalo, Matt Marinovich. Matt is the author of Strange Skies. He lives in Brooklyn, worked as an editor at Interview, Martha Stewart Living, People. I didn't know him at People magazine. And Real Simple. I never heard of them either. He's written a lot of articles in Esquire, Salon, Open City, the Barcelona Review. Anyway, The Winter Girl reminds me a lot of a Jim Thompson novel, which was like a pulp fiction novel back from the 50s. And I heartily recommend the book. It's about a couple who live in Brooklyn and they have to move out to the Hamptons temporarily to take care of the wife's father who is dying. And all of a sudden, lots of sneaky, evil things take place. And there are so many spoilers in here. I don't want to give anything away, but The Winter Girl is worth reading. John, did you have, now I'm digressing, but have you ever read any Jim Thompson?
I mean, he wrote The Grifters, right?
Yes.
But he was from Chicago, I believe.
Right.
And terrific noir pulp writer. I mean, he was the forerunner for Elmore Leonard. I think a lot of Elmore Leonard. If anyone who's a fan of Elmore Leonard would love Jim Thompson.
Does noir writing exist anymore, or is that a thing of the past?
That's a very good question. I think it's how you define it. And I think that we're talking about in film. Noir today would be The Usual Suspects, which also features some great scenes set in New York. The whole opening of the film is shot, depending on whose version you believe of the film, the beginning of the movie is set in New York. I think to some extent, some people might want to call some of the great Lee Child books noir. The Jack Reacher series.
We're going to have Leon as a guest. He's had a couple of his books take place in New York City. We're running out of time, and I just also wanted to mention, because you're talking about faking the Assassin's Hotel, you often see shots on movies in New York City where people make a right turn on Spring Street, and only a New Yorker's really going to know this, and then the next shot, they're walking around on 93rd and 3rd. John, it was great having you. I really heartily recommend John's books, the Caitlin Strong series, and just Google him is it Jon Land author?
It's JonLandBooks.com.
JonLandBooks.com.
Jon, no H.
Jon, no H. John, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Rob.
Okay, bye.